Welcome to the Apostolic Christian Counseling and Family Services podcast. This is podcast 2 out of 3 podcasts on cell phone use. This is a conversation designed to help the hurting, nurture hope, and encourage growth. The topic today is specifically common mistakes and safeguards when it comes to cell phones and cell phone use among our children and how we navigate that as parents. With me again, we have Craig Stickling and Brian Suter. Welcome. Thanks for coming, guys. And I am Matt Kaufman. We left off in our last podcast talking about what needs to be taught in addition to the cell phone use. So if I can use a silly example that I think we can all relate to, sometimes you can travel someplace, be it Chicago or any other place, and if you were to ask really how you got there, you couldn't really say, I don't know how I got here. I was navigated here. And so we have lost a sense of navigation because of the navigator in the cell phone. And that is maybe not worth our time to speak of because there's heavier matters of spiritual worth here today. But what needs to be taught to our young people alongside the cell phone, because the cell phone is going to infringe upon it?
The opportunity to engage with people still face-to-face. I think that there's a huge issue where we're so easy just to be comfortable hiding in my own room, just engaging in technology, thinking I'm socializing, but really I'm missing a huge piece that just comes from people to people.
And none of those things are beneath us. Is that what I'm hearing? Those things need to be handled with care because the cell phone would infringe upon it? Is that
Absolutely,
true?
Absolutely, yeah. You've got to do those teachings and you got to build those skills, because even though the cell phone doesn't need those are huge skills for being able to be successful and being able to communicate with people, being able to develop connections. And if you can't do that, then you're going to really be limited in how you can even fulfill the Great Commission and so on and so forth, and being able to have deep, meaningful relationships as they grow.
What are some other things? Anything else come to mind as something that needs to be guided alongside?
I guess one thing that comes to mind is a verse that Alice and I have been working on memorizing right now is Proverbs 14:30, and it says, "A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh." And I think the idea there is that with cell phones and technology, our mind and heart can just be so overwhelmed with information and stuff going on that it's really important for us to be able to help our kids be able to have solitude, be able to have quietness, and be able to be bored. Manage that, and hopefully that can be something that they can tolerate. And I think that's a great time that the Lord can speak to our hearts. And if we can't sit in quietness and have our heart calm and our mind calm, we're going to miss out on connection with the Lord.
Do I push through that solitude? Craig, what do you have thoughts on that?
Well, just continuation that solitude piece, and even as it reflects on our ability to be rested and to get rest. And when that phone is sitting next to their ear all night long and notifications and buzzes and all things are lights up and all of that, there's research that talks about that we are in the midst of a sleep-deprived generation. Our kids are tired.
And such a foundational scriptural concept, rest, isn't it? I mean, it's replete throughout the scriptures, the rest of God. And be still and know that I am God. So it speaks right to Scripture, great things to teach alongside. How about when it comes to connections? I mean, it would seem to me that you can fire a text off, okay, let's just say between a girl and a guy, and it could be the very first text that this guy sends this girl or whatnot, and they're able to make connections that 25 years ago took a lot of gumph to do, right? Where maybe he would need to find her and might need to speak to her in person, and it was awkward, and you had those social things that inhibited him from saying anything too intimate. And so the relationship would seem maybe more naturally grow slowly. Do we see an expediting of relationships and connections going at depths quicker with this technology? And what do we need to teach alongside that?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, when you're able to communicate with somebody who's not actually in front of you, it kind of takes away the inhibitors, and you can very quickly text or send something via a post or something like that that's very intimate and very inappropriate oftentimes. It can ramp a relationship from hardly knowing each other to going to the deep end of the pool, and there's not this progression of being able to pursue somebody, being able to understand their heart. And in a culture that's very sexualized, that turns into the end game. And, somebody can fire off a naked picture or a picture that's inappropriate, so on and so forth, and take a relationship from barely knowing somebody into the deep end of the pool, which is very damaging spiritually, socially, and emotionally, and really creates a lot of hurt.
What are some of the teaching pieces, Craig? How do we help our children maybe understand this dynamic?
I think it's very important that our children know what to expect, and that we have this discussion with them ahead of time, even before they get their cell phone, or as you look at a contract maybe with your cell phone and your child, that they're aware that these type of situations can and probably will occur. That someone might send them a text or a message or a photo and want some response, want some direction from them, and to let them know already ahead of time, hey, when this happens, your heart or head, depending on how well you like or don't like this person, is going to direct you to do something. Now, what do you do? And if you're not sure what to do, then what do you do? Will you come to mom and dad? Will you check in with us? Can we be there to support you?
And I wonder even how much the lines are blurred on what is intimate. Oh, Dad, I would never text this or text that. But texting somebody what color your socks are is really kind of intimate, right? So it sounds benign, right? What color your socks are. But really, it's information that really only the people in your house would naturally know. And so there's a blurring of lines between, even on our radar screen, of what is intimate and what is not intimate, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, who should know this information, who should not know this information.
And technology has driven not just words anymore. People don't even spend time with words. It's with pictures. And they'll send a picture of their socks. They're not going to take the time to describe their socks. I'm just going to take a picture of my socks and send it. So visual pictures have really become a replacement for word communication.
And I think it all comes down to being able to communicate. If let's say you were to sit down with a group of adult young men, and you were to say, let's say they're 20-year-old men, could you sit down with your dad and have a deep, intimate conversation about your walk with the Lord, where you're at with, topics such as marriage or how your job's going, who your peers are, what are you struggling with? If they're honest, a lot of, young men and females too would have a really hard time sitting down and having that kind of conversation with their parents. And I think to have that view for parents to say, if you can't sit down and talk with your child when they're 10 about what's going on in school and challenges that are going on there, it is going to be really difficult for them to be able to have that conversation with their 20-year-old 10 years down the road. And you want to start having those kind of hard conversations, but you want to have those for the future.
Let's talk a little bit about, what common mistakes do you see that parents are making with cell phones and their children? I mean, just what are the mistakes that you see that we could learn from?
We get comfortable in knowing if my child has a phone, they're safe. And they can text us or they can tell us, hey, I'm going to be at Joe's house for the weekend, or I'm going to be, hanging out with the friends at the lake, or, we're going to stay an extra hour and go shopping. And sometimes just because they send us that, we sometimes make the mistake of just going, oh, okay, well then I know where they're at. That's good. And sometimes we forget that we still have to do our parenting 101. It's still good to check in. It's still good to follow through. It's still good to say, hey, if they're going to be at, Joe's house for Saturday night, I'm going to call up Joe's mom and dad. Hey, heard you're having the kids. Do you need anything? Just that follow-up piece. It seems like in our distraction, we have sometimes forgotten to do that piece.
Excellent suggestion. I can see where that would be a place where we might fall down. Brian, how about you?
Yeah, I think that's very true. Just being able to follow through, do the sort of things you would do anyways, but also just to remember, I think a common area that parents can fall into is either giving a phone too early when their children don't have the skills to be able to manage a cell phone, or waiting too late and frustrating their child by, saying, nope, you're not going to have it, you're not going to get it until you get out of my home. And, that's going to frustrate them. And then number two, they're not going to build the skills while they're under your supervision and your roof. And
Colossians speaks to that frustration. Fathers, frustrate not your children, right?
Yep. Yeah. That's a great way to frustrate your kids, have them be the only graduating senior without any technology.
Right.
The cell phone puts them in a place where they have to make so many more decisions about so many more things. And I think one of the downfalls, or sometimes a mistake, is that we just kind of assume, well, my child's always been a good kid, so I know that they're not going to be doing this with the phone or looking up this or having this relationships or getting caught in this. And sometimes it's easy, I think, just to assume that, well, I trust my kid, they're going to do well. And I think that's that's a wise thing to go, it's okay to trust my child, but it's still good for me to be going through with their phone and looking through and being aware and having conversation and following up with them. And because there's a lot of influences that come through the phone that have nothing to do with your child's character, but it puts your child in a place that they have to respond, and they need our help to navigate that.
That leads us, I think, to an important question, Craig, and I'd like to have you respond to this. What kind of limits or safeguards should we be putting on children's phones?
I love the example just in driving. When we think of someone who's going to class, I mean, they have to take a driver's ed class before they even get behind the wheel experience. So they have to learn about what they're going to be using. And then from there, then they have an instructor, and that instructor walks them through, rides with them, is side by side for an extended period of time. They have to log hour after hour with this instrument, a car, next to mom and dad. And then from that, once they get their license, they're not allowed to be out at certain times. They're only allowed to have so many passengers. And so it's a progression piece. And I think that's a great model for technology to use and to have safeguards with saying, my child can start off with a phone, but you know what? It's a limited thing. You know what? You get it for maybe a half hour every day after school, or a half hour or an hour on Saturday. And then you progress with that over time. As they show responsibility, they get to progress how much they get.
I think that's a powerful, even examples. You look at the car. Why is so much care taken into preparation for the car? Well, isn't it the consequence and the power of the vehicle? Of those things that have power, we approach with trepidation. And I think we would be a fool to say that the cell phone does not have power. Brian, what would you say?
Well, I think with that, the perspective for parents to know that it's not just a device to make phone calls, that this is a computer that gives them access to anything under the sun that they could ever want if you don't put any limits in place. It's not just a device to make phone calls. It's a device to do anything you can imagine, and therefore parents have got to have a plan, and they've got to be able to set some things in place. I think a big mistake that oftentimes parents make is they give ownership of the phone to the kid too early. So if you're talking about a cell phone and giving it to them, that's fine. Okay, let's do that. But to give ownership to them needs to come way down the road and is part of that progression, I think, that Craig's talking about there.
What are some practical things? Give us some ideas on what's reasonable. Something that kids would say, no parents are doing that, right? Now, you have, in your profession, you talk to a lot of parents and a lot of children. Share with us what parents are doing.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, to remember that you don't like limits any more than your kids do. And so they're not going to be very happy about this, but it's not your job to keep them happy. They're going to feel otherwise about that. But absolutely, you need to be thinking about starting off with them just being able to make phone calls. And the neat thing about the cell phones these days is that you can put so many restrictions, so many limits, and you can kind of strip it down so it'll just make phone calls. You can put limits in place that they can only view certain things, or that they can't download apps without a code, and so on and so forth. And those are, you need to put those in place, and they're extremely helpful.
I love the fact my wife is very good at engaging in technology and figuring those things out, and I am not. That's not something that I naturally desire to do, and so I'm thankful for her piece of that. And sometimes we talk with parents, and they're like, I don't know what to do. How do I, where do I even start with this phone? And a great place to go is you're getting the phone from a provider. Talk to the provider right when you get the phone. Hey, what do I do to put limits and safeguards on this phone? And go to their website. Most cell phone providers have great websites in their websites on parental controls. And you can learn so much right there about how to limit their data, their time, when their phone will allow certain text messages to come through or not. You can block photos. You can block websites. You can block and put so many safeguards on the phone through your service provider. It's amazing. And if you don't even know what to do, I would say walk into your cell phone provider and bring the phone and hand it to the person and say, I'm a parent in need. Tell me what I need to do.
I love that. That breathes so much hope, Craig, when you say that. It breathes so much hope, because we can talk about what's lurking in the darkness, right? And who's in the opposing corner. It's so nice to know that the service provider in many ways is in the corner of the parent. They have a vested interest in the well-being of their clients. And secular or not, they understand the dangers.
Absolutely. And I think for parents to know, too, that part of this, if they're signing up for giving their kids a cell phone, they're going to have to be signing up for learning. that it's okay that you don't know everything how a cell phone works, and use the provider, use resources, use the technology expert in your congregation. Sit down with your kids and ask them how this app works, or what's going on with your friends. What are the big apps that are going on? How is it a good thing, and where have you seen it not been a good, a danger? And have those discussions with them, especially early on. Kids are going to be excited to teach mom and dad about what's going on.
One more piece, just to kind of follow up with this, is that we're going to go back to the foundation piece. Even through mistakes, we can teach. And sometimes as mom and dads, we're going to make mistakes here, but that's okay. We can learn from the mistakes. That helps strengthen our awareness, our technology level. It bumps it up. And that's just going to bring a great model of teaching to our kids as well.
And Craig, that's a tremendous way to conclude here today's podcast, as we've talked about common mistakes and safeguards, because where we would like to go in the next podcast is to really debrief, what do we do when things go wrong? What do we do as parents when we found a text, when we found an image, when we've discovered that our children have not been walking in the light? And that's a piece that parents are crying out to hear. So we'll look forward to that. But as a conclusion today, thanks for listening. Thanks, Craig and Brian. If you are interested in more information, or if you want a review of any of the concepts that were mentioned here today, please visit our website at accounseling.org, and you will find more resources. Have a great day.